It's March 16th, 2020, and it's time to review 5 of the most outrageous, infuriating, or just plain baffling things that have happened lately. It's your Facepalm 5. Let's count 'em up. Number 1, seriously, is there anybody else we can put in charge of this coronavirus thing? Hi everybody, welcome to the Facepalm 5. Thanks for joining me. So we start off this time, as you probably would have expected, with the coronavirus pandemic, as it is now officially called. And I swear to God, if our civilization crumbles because the bottomless ineptitude of the Trump administration turns a typically mild respiratory infection into Captain Trips, the last one of us to succumb to the virus needs to chisel something about this onto a granite countertop so that in a few million years, whatever intelligent species that evolves to replace us can find it, learn about our mistakes, and then ignore it and wind up destroying themselves eventually too. Hey, at least we will have tried. So, we have the worst president, and we are now in one of the worst situations in which to have the worst president, and as one might expect, having the worst president in this situation is making the situation worse. In an attempt to calm public fears about the coronavirus outbreak, Trump delivered a rare televised address from the Oval Office last week. All he had to do was sit there for 10 minutes and read a scripted speech from a teleprompter. But he couldn't even get through that without looking like a sedated prisoner of war in a proof of life video. And he also repeatedly lied his ass off, spreading misinformation that only makes things worse. For example, Trump announced a 30-day ban on travel to the U.S. from Europe. At the time, the ban did not apply to all of Europe. Trump noted that the U.K. was exempted from the travel ban in the speech, but also exempted at the time of the announcement was Ireland, Ukraine, Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria, and other countries. In other words, it wasn't a ban on travel from Europe. It was a ban on travel from some European countries. Since it was announced, the travel ban has been expanded to include the UK and Ireland, but that's still not all of Europe. It's not exactly a flat-out lie, just imprecise. It would be like a country in Europe banning travel from the United States, but not Canada and Mexico, and calling that a North American travel ban. Technically accurate, but a little misleading. So you want flat out lies? I got those too. During that same Oval Office address, Trump claimed that he'd gotten major health insurance companies to waive copays for coronavirus treatment. In fact, the insurance companies have only agreed to waive copays for testing, not for treatment. The next day after that Oval Office speech, during congressional testimony, the head of the CDC, not the insurance companies, pledged to use his federal authority to ensure that treatment for those who have the virus, as well as testing, will be covered for everyone. And he didn't volunteer that either. It was in response to questioning from Democratic Representatives Ayanna Pressley and Katie Porter. Just saying. And by the way, I just want to make it clear that so far as I have been able to discover, the coronavirus testing and treatment will be covered. It's just something the head of the CDC said to Congress last week. Don't treat that as a guarantee. If you're here in the U.S. and you think you should be treated for the virus and you're worried about the cost, do your own research and find out what, if anything, it will cost for you. Because remember, we're the greatest nation on planet Earth, but also healthcare is a commodity and not everyone can afford to access it, even in the midst of a public health crisis. God bless America. Trump also described coronavirus as a foreign virus and said that people from Europe had seeded it in the United States because fear-mongering about immigrants and foreigners is the only thing this piece of garbage knows how to do. Also, the day before giving that speech, he retweeted right-wing propagandist and noted small face haver Charlie Kirk saying, "We need the wall more than ever," meaning his ridiculous border wall, because a wall that doesn't actually work to keep people out will keep out people carrying the virus? Is the virus unable to survive in someone who crawls through a tunnel or climbs a ladder? Have we tried ladder treatment for the virus? Is that... Number 2, sure, it's a pandemic, but hucksters gotta huck. So, I'll get back to Trump in a few minutes, but of course, he's not the only person propagating dangerous lies and misinformation about the coronavirus. In fact, Trump and the people I'm getting ready to tell you about have both been spreading the exact same lie, that there's an effective treatment for COVID-19, the condition caused by the coronavirus, or hell, maybe even a cure. Trump has repeatedly claimed to have cut red tape in order to speed access to antiviral treatments that don't yet exist. But there are a few of his fellow shameless frauds out there claiming to actually have treatments or cures for the virus. And those cures can be yours if the price is right. Just not on The Price is Right. They've shut down production. Remember Jim Baker, the televangelist who went to prison in the 90s for fraud? Guess what he's doing now? Committing fraud. So Baker's been selling this colloidal silver solution on his religious broadcast / medicine show, claiming that it kills and eliminates all kinds of viral infections, including coronavirus, SARS, and HIV. He also claims that it boosts your immune system. Need I say, none of that is actually true? There's no evidence for any of those claims. Selling a phony cure during a public health crisis is despicable enough. It becomes even more unconscionable when you factor in that Baker's audience is predominantly elderly people who are among those at the highest risk of getting seriously ill or dying as a result of COVID-19. And Jim Baker is not alone. Conspiracy theorist and harasser of parents of murdered children, Alex Jones, recently claimed that a toothpaste he sells on his show kills coronavirus. A toothpaste that contains silver. What is it with these crackpots and silver? Are they all William Jennings Bryan superfans? Jones touted his silver toothpaste by claiming that its coronavirus-killing properties had been confirmed by the Department of Homeland Security and the Pentagon. Never mind that it's not true at all. There's no evidence that Alex Jones's magic silver toothpaste has any effect on a coronavirus infection. Since when does Alex Jones trust the federal government? He's citing the Pentagon and DHS as reliable sources of information all of a sudden? Or has he come around since the Nazis officially took over in 2017? That must be it. That must be it. The Food and Drug Administration, the Federal Trade Commission, and several state attorneys general have ordered con artists like Baker and Jones and others to stop selling their phony coronavirus cures, which is good. But there are more ways to cynically profit from a national emergency than peddling patent medicines. You could do what Baker's fellow televangelist Ray Comfort is doing, and that is rush out a pamphlet titled 7 Ways to Protect Yourself from Coronavirus. And this pamphlet I'm talking about is tastefully designed to look like a respiratory mask. Just stay classy, Ray. Don't ever change. And Ray is selling these pamphlets, shamelessly cashing in on the coronavirus panic on his website. Or, if you don't want to do that either, you could do what the assholes in the next story are doing. Number 3, there's a new season of Hoarders, and it's being filmed all across the country, and you're in it right now. At least, if you're in the United States, you're in it right now. There may be hoarding going on in other countries as well. I'm not exactly sure, but it sure as hell is happening here in my country. So, because of that, this is directed specifically at my fellow Americans. Apologies, international viewers. Tried to buy hand sanitizer or disinfectant wipes lately? How'd that go? If you had trouble finding some and you live in Tennessee or Kentucky, it might be the fault of Matt and Noah Colvin, the so-called hoarding bros, who bought over 17,000 bottles of hand sanitizer, cleaning out stores across those two states. The Colvins intended to sell the sanitizer to people in order to make a quick buck on the coronavirus panic. They managed to unload about 300 bottles of it, some going for as much as $70 a bottle, before Amazon and eBay got wind of their price gouging scheme and shut them down. The Colvins were then ordered by the Tennessee Attorney General's office to stop selling the hand sanitizer, and the Attorney General's office confiscated this stockpile of hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes that they had and donated it to a local church instead. So good, to hell with them both. They should be in prison. But the Colvin bros and others who hoped to do a little good old-fashioned pandemic profiteering didn't corner the market on hoarding. Case in point, tried to buy toilet paper lately? If your area is one of those affected by a TP shortage, it's not because people are using more toilet paper. The most noticeable effect the outbreak has had on the U.S. so far has been the cancellation of public gatherings, the closing of schools and businesses, and more people spending more time at home as a result. None of that suggests that people have a greater need for toilet paper than they had before. There's a shortage because as soon as it became clear that the coronavirus could develop into a serious problem, some people ran out to the store and bought all the toilet paper they could cram into their cars. And you know what? I don't know, maybe I'm judging those people unfairly. It could be that they genuinely needed that much toilet paper on account of what gigantic fucking assholes they are. I get that this behavior is being driven by fear. People are worried that they won't have enough toilet paper, so they run out and buy a whole bunch of it at once. But here's the thing about that. Those kind of shortages are caused by the very panic which they are the cause of. It's shit ticket circular logic. Just continue to buy toilet paper as you need it, like you always do, fuckwit, and you won't have to worry about stockpiling it because there won't be any shortages. But that advice isn't going to work, is it? Obviously not. Number 4, we're really committed to making this as bad as possible, aren't we? Look, this coronavirus outbreak wouldn't be something we really needed to worry about if we all just remained calm, made an effort to stay informed, practiced some basic precautions, and heeded the advice of public health officials. In other words, this coronavirus is something we really need to worry about because there are quite a few of us who can't be bothered to do any of those things I just listed, let alone all of them. Here in the United States, despite the advice of public health officials, many state and local jurisdictions have been slow to close public facilities such as schools and libraries, and businesses have been reluctant to send employees home or take steps to prevent large gatherings of people, which is how the virus spreads. Major professional sports leagues, and also the XFL, have canceled or postponed their seasons, but so far, WrestleMania is still officially a go for the first week of April. And yeah, I'm going to get into my wrestling fan bullshit for just a second. Please bear with me. I don't want to make too big a deal out of the WrestleMania thing because it's just one event and it's definitely not going to happen. If Vince McMahon doesn't cancel WrestleMania himself, the city of Tampa is going to do it for him probably later this week. But I do want to take this opportunity to remind everyone, especially those of you who aren't wrestling fans, but you know what? Maybe even more especially those of you who are wrestling fans and continue to support WWE and Vince McMahon. I just want to remind all of you that Vince McMahon is a horrible human being. He's only as good as he is legally mandated to be. If he thought he could get away with holding a live event with 70,000 spectators in the middle of a pandemic, he would do it and not lose a moment's sleep over it as long as the check cleared. He's Donald Trump only with money. To hell with Vince McMahon and to hell with anyone who takes up for him. But it's not just slow to act governments and evil wrestling promoters who are the problem here. It's also regular, everyday dipshits who have been going out to restaurants and clubs these last few weeks as though the CDC hasn't been screaming at them to please not do that. Because here's the thing. If Vince McMahon did somehow get to hold WrestleMania as scheduled, sure, some people who already bought tickets and made travel plans would choose not to go. The sensible people. But lots of people would still show up, even knowing the risks to themselves and the rest of society. Maybe someone they know would say to them in the days leading up to it, hey, maybe don't go. And their answer would probably be something like, I've been planning it for so long, and I already took off work. And even if I can get a refund for the ticket, I'm not sure about the plane or the hotel. I think I'm just going to go. And anyway, I'm young and healthy. Even if I get exposed to it, I'm going to be fine. And then like 2 weeks later, their grandparents and a bunch of their immunocompromised friends are in intensive care or dead because that's how an outbreak works. Why don't we know how an outbreak works yet? People have been tweeting pictures of crowds of clueless assholes eating at restaurants, going to clubs, going to concerts, going to churches in the middle of a pandemic. And yes, now that the CDC has officially recommended no gatherings of more than 50 people for the next 8 weeks, and mayors and governors have begun flat out banning large gatherings, a lot of that is finally going to stop, hopefully. But shame on us that it had to get to that point. Look, this is not a time to panic, but it is a time to act sensibly. Stockpiling toilet paper and hand sanitizer isn't acting sensibly, but neither is going to a stadium or a theme park or a restaurant packed with people during a pandemic. I think one of the reasons governments have been so slow to step in with bans or at least stricter recommendations is because they assumed we, the people, would behave reasonably and be willing to put the good of society ahead of our own selfish interests. But why would they assume that? When have we ever done that? What, after 9/11? For a week? Well done, everyone. We pulled it together after a horrific terrorist attack for a week 20 years ago. Can we do better, please? Anyway, now it's time for the segment devoted to some of the other things Donald Trump has done recently to disgrace the presidency and embarrass and or endanger the United States and the rest of the world. It's number 5, The Further Misadventures of Lord Dampnut. Please keep in mind, as always, the following is not a complete list. So, he told Sean Hannity that he thinks the World Health Organization's estimate of a 3.4% death rate for COVID-19 is, quote, a false number. A self-described hunch of Trump's based on, quote, a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this. Trump told Hannity that he thinks personally the number is way under 1%. Thank you for sharing your expert opinion. Expert on nothing. He reportedly offered large sums of money to a German pharmaceutical company to develop a coronavirus vaccine only for the United States. The virus is affecting the entire world. Trump reportedly tried to buy an exclusive right to a coronavirus vaccine just for the United States. That's what America First means, you all. That's what America First means. A day after calling for Americans to unify and put politics aside in that aforementioned Oval Office address I talked about at the top of the video, he tweeted misleading attacks against Joe Biden and Barack Obama, suggesting that his response to coronavirus has been better than their response to swine flu over 10 years ago. And he has repeatedly made those attacks in the last few days. And 2 days after his Oval Office address, he stood before reporters in the White House Rose Garden and declared a national emergency. Good. Unfortunately, after he did that, he kept talking. During that talk, he again lied about the availability of coronavirus tests, announcing that private companies were establishing drive-through testing locations all across the country, claiming that Google was developing a website to help people facilitate testing at a nearby location, and predicting that testing locations would be announced Sunday night. There has been no such announcement, and the website deal was apparently news to Google, which said, following Trump's statement, that it was working to develop a website to be used as a triage tool, but it's only in the very early stages and was about to launch a test run in California, not nationwide. This has just led to more confusion, which seems to be the primary result anytime Trump tries to cover up the glaring ineptitude of himself and his administration with hollow declarations of competence. During that same Rose Garden appearance, Trump was asked about the firing of the White House pandemic team 2 years ago and how that affected his administration's response to the coronavirus crisis. His response was to complain that it was a nasty question and to insist that he had nothing to do with firing the pandemic team, that he didn't even know about it. And furthermore, to suggest that these sorts of things happen all the time and it's no big deal. And he turned to Dr. Anthony Fauci and said, I don't know, maybe Tony knows about it. Tony, do you know about it? Tony works with the CDC. Tony is an infectious disease expert. The pandemic team that was fired was working under the authority of the National Security Council. The pandemic guy, the infectious disease guy, is not in charge of the National Security Council. Even if Tony knows about it, I'm sure Tony does know about it, because everybody knows about it. Even if Tony knew about it, it's not like he did it. Along those same lines, when asked if he took responsibility for the difficulties in getting people tested for the virus, Trump said, and this is a direct quote, "No, I don't take any responsibility at all." Now there's leadership for you, right? It really harkens back to past presidents, like Harry Truman, who famously had a sign on his desk in the Oval Office, which read, "What buck? I never saw any buck." Trump explained in his yammering, incoherent way that he didn't take responsibility for any of the problems with the response to COVID-19 because his administration was starting out in a bad situation thanks to the Obama administration, which, I'm sure I don't have to remind you, left office 3 very, very long years ago. Not only did Trump get rid of the pandemic response team of the National Security Council 2 years ago, his response to this outbreak has been slow, grudging, and inadequate from the very start. The current outbreak was first identified in December. The first confirmed American case was identified in January. From then until the first week of March, which would be this month, Trump repeatedly downplayed the seriousness of the threat, contradicted the recommendations of public health officials, spread misinformation, spread conspiracy theories, falsely claimed that tests, treatments, and even vaccines were either available or would soon be available, and mostly failed to take actions that could have slowed the pace of the outbreak before it got this bad. He only seemed moved to comment on the outbreak at all when the stock market took a dive, as it did again today, and his strategy to counteract that has been the same as his strategy when he responds to anything else: get on TV and tell lies. The day before his Oval Office address, he left a meeting with Republican senators, told reporters that the outbreak would, quote, go away, and took credit for what he insisted was the fantastic response of his administration. Of course, he didn't take responsibility. He never takes responsibility. That's not what he does. He's a liar and a coward and a fraud. But that doesn't mean he isn't responsible. He is. And in November, those of us who are registered and able to vote in the United States need to hold him responsible. Because the shittiest part of all of this is we're the ones who are responsible for him. We as a people need to own that. And we as an electorate need to do something about it. Well, that's it. Stay tuned in a few seconds for the post show, but for now, that's 5. Speak out, act out, resist. Look after each other. And we're back. It's the same show, but I'm calling it the post show because those of you who prefer to just watch the Facepalm 5 part, you can stop watching now. That part's over. For the rest of the show, it's going to be me interacting with the live chat and just kind of rambling on and, doing whatever. So if you don't have any interest in that and you just wanted to watch the Facepalm 5 bit, you can stop watching now. I promise it will not hurt my feelings, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching the archive version at some point in the future. Just stop watching now if you don't care to hear me ramble and hang out with the chat. But for those of you who do want to hear me ramble and hang out with the chat, and especially for those of you who are here live right now in the chat, let's do some hanging out, shall we? I see I got a couple of super chats already. And they're all from John Burns. So thank you, John, for your multiple super chats. John Burns says, going to church is the problem, says the Steve guy who doesn't recognize the First Amendment. I'm not really sure what that means. Going to church isn't the problem. Gathering in public in large groups is the problem, not just going to church. Steve is aware that Trump hasn't yet closed the CDC. Baby steps. No, he hasn't closed it yet. We're the ones who are responsible for him in a year. Joe Biden is the worst. Joe Biden is not the worst. Trump is the worst. Trump is the worst. Joe Biden may not be the ideal Democratic nominee. In fact, I'll take the maybe out of it. Joe Biden is not the ideal Democratic nominee. But if you are faced as a voter with a choice between Joe Biden and Trump, and you do not choose Joe Biden, I have nothing nice to say to you after that. I'm sorry, Joe Biden is not the worst. Not in this election. Also, a super chat just got in from Twilord. Thank you very much. Progressives, that hand sanitizer story is so deeply immoral. Libertarians, yeah, how dare Amazon shut down a small business? Exactly. Exactly. We're so doomed. Okay, so let me see what's going on here in the live chat. By the way, if anybody cares, I won't be presumptuous and launch into this unless people in the live chat say they want to hear it. But I do have thoughts about the Democratic debate last night. If anybody cares to hear me blather on about that for a few minutes, if not, I will happily talk about something else or talk about whatever you want to talk about in the live chat. Austin Mount, I didn't hear about the apparent DDoS attack on the HHS system, so I can't really comment on that. Matt F, Dwayne Elizondo, Mountain Dew, Herbert Camacho, 2020, whatever that damned, I don't know what that means. But thank you for the super chat. Yes, Subrated Geek, thank you for reminding me. I forgot to thank my patrons. I need to give shout outs to my new Patreon patrons. So I'm going to do that right now. So their names these are the patrons who, okay, I'll talk about the debate and then I'll do the debate thing. So new $5 patrons, Kelly Wilbar. Thank you, Kelly. Laura Ruby T. Arnold. Thank you, Laura. Eddie Kaplan. Thank you, Eddie. Bacca. Thank you, Bacca. Adam A. Thank you, Adam. Michael Worley's penis. More on that in a second. Thank you, Michael Worley's penis. And Phoebo Troilo. Thank you to everybody who just became a patron at whatever level you became a patron. Thank you to everyone who is a patron at whatever level you are currently pledging. And just a reminder, if you want to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/Steve Shives. And pledges of any amount are greatly appreciated. But $5 a month or more gets you a shout out. Now, also, I just want to note the guy or whoever, the person of indeterminate gender, I don't know, who pledged under the name Michael Worley's penis. They actually pledged under a much longer name that I'm sure they just wanted to hear me say on the air. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do the, pledge $5 to get Steve to say a silly name on the air. That's not going to happen. So if you want to retract your pledge as a result of that, I understand. But I'm not people who pledge $5 and say, let's make the name something goofy and we'll just get Steve to say it. I'm not going to do that. I appreciate the support, but it's not pay $5 to get Steve to say silly shit on the air. So let me just make that clear right now. Now, and a couple more super chats came in. Let me see. John Burns, another one, says, I'm waiting a year to roll around to hear Steve screaming, why did we vote for this moron? No, that's not going to happen. I might say, why did we vote for this moron in terms of why didn't we nominate someone else? Like, why didn't we nominate Sanders instead of Biden? But once the choice comes down to Biden versus Trump, I will not be having, and if Biden wins, I'm not going to be regretting that. I'm certainly not going to say like, oh, I wish Trump was back. That's absurd. That's never going to happen. Of course, if Biden turns out to not be a great president, I will make my opinion known about that. But I'm not going to be a year from now going, oh, why'd we vote for this guy if the alternative was Trump? That would be ridiculous. And another one from John Burns. Herbert Commando was president in the Idiocracy movie. I've only seen Idiocracy once, and I guess I didn't remember it very well. So that's a reference I didn't get. Thank you for correcting me. And then another one here from David Colby. Thank you, David. Since I have no work for 3 weeks, do you want to be in a Star Trek Adventures tabletop RPG game? The idea is called Voyager, but good. As tempting as it is based on that description, no, I have no interest in being in a tabletop RPG game. But thank you very much for the invitation, for real. I appreciate it. But no, that's not going to happen. Okay, so the debate. Let me talk about the Democratic debate. After watching that debate last night, I still fully intend to vote now that Elizabeth Warren has dropped out. I still intend to vote for Bernie Sanders in my state's primary because I think that Bernie Sanders is much closer to my feelings and priorities in terms of policy. I think if his policies were enacted, it would be much better for the country. And he's the more progressive candidate, and I think in the primary you should vote for the more progressive candidate. So I'm still planning on voting for Bernie Sanders in the primary, but I completely get why Joe Biden is beating him. And it is not just a poor reflection on the electorate or the party. I completely understand why, faced with a choice between those two frontrunners, why a lot of people would choose Biden as opposed to choosing Bernie. And the reason I think overall Biden did better in the debate last night than Sanders did, even though Bernie definitely had his moments, is that when Biden talks about his plans, about his policies, when Biden talks about what he would do if he were president, or how he would respond to a crisis, or what he would do about this or that. Yeah, he yammers. Yeah, he stumbles over his words. Sometimes he takes a second to try to think of what he wants to say. But if you cut past all of that, Biden responds to questions by talking about specific things he wants to do. And you can argue over whether or not he's being honest. You can argue over whether or not the thing he wants to do is the best thing to do in a current situation. How about now? Can you hear me now? Sorry, I'm doing that. Let me let me go out and come back in and see if that helps. Just a second. Oh, audio is back. Can you hear me now? Audio is back now. I'm not sure what the deal was with that. I'm sorry about that. So anyway, yeah. How far did you? Okay, I was just getting to the point where I was going to say why I could see why people are supporting Biden. Okay. Okay, people are supporting Biden because Biden answers questions at the debate in ways that allow people to have a sense of what his policies would be and what he wants to do. It's really it's as simple as that. He he gives people an idea of what he wants to do. Bernie answers questions by speaking in sort of broad terms. You know, Bernie at several times during the debate would say, in response to questions, would say things like, "We need to take on the power structure in America. We need to question who has the power in America. We need to take on the billionaires. We need to take on the drug companies," right? And I'm with him on that. I agree with that. But if you're a person who isn't already a Bernie supporter, who isn't already hip to what he wants to do, all you hear are just vagaries. What does that mean? When he says, let's take on the drug companies, what does that mean? Does that mean raise taxes? Does that mean new regulations? Does that mean stop them from price gouging? Does that mean, I mean, what does that mean? And I'm not saying he doesn't have specific plans. I'm just saying this is an opportunity for him to get specific during the debate instead of going off into his stump speech rhetoric, which he tends to do. When he says, let's take on the billionaires, let's take on Wall Street, what does that mean? Are you going to impose new regulations on Wall Street? That would be great. Are you going to raise taxes on billionaires? That would be great. And I know he wants to do that, but he needs to say that specifically. Right? Instead of going off into the soaring rhetoric about, you know, combating income inequality and challenging the power structure, that I'm with him. I agree with him. I think those are all good ideas. But he needs to be specific. So when Bernie's over here going off, you know, in his rhetoric, Biden is over here, you know, yeah, okay, he stumbles and stammers and hems and haws a little bit. But if you cut through all that, he's giving you specific plans. And maybe they aren't the best plans. Maybe if you know what Bernie's specific plans are, you think, well, Bernie has a better plan. But if you're just watching the debate and you see these two people, one guy is telling you, here's specifically what I will do. And that really came through in the questions about what they would do in response to the pandemic, where Biden was saying, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this and we'll do this. And Bernie took that as an opportunity to push for Medicare for all, which is something that I completely agree with and I think we desperately need. I am very disappointed that Biden doesn't support Medicare for all, and I was disappointed that more Democratic candidates in the primary didn't support Medicare for all. I think that should be a basic tenet of the Democratic platform. Universal health care, real universal health care. I'm completely on board with Bernie on that. But Biden is over here responding to a question about the coronavirus pandemic by saying we'll do A, B, C, and D. And Bernie's over here saying Medicare for all, which is not as specific and focused a response as Biden. So I think that's a big reason why Biden is attracting the level of support he is, and to the point where it's in terms of the polling, it's really lopsided. I mean, if you've looked at the recent national polls between Biden and Sanders, Biden is way ahead. I'm still going to vote for Bernie. I still hope that Bernie somehow manages to turn it around because I would like for him to be the nominee and I would like for him to be the president. But I get it. Like, I get why someone might choose Biden as opposed to Sanders. It makes sense to me. I would prefer they make a different choice. but it makes sense to me. So those are my thoughts on the debate. I thought, and the other thing is, I feel like during the debate, and a lot of it has to do with what I was talking about already, like the way he tends to speak in broad terms as opposed to specifics, while Biden seems to do the opposite. There were a couple of times during the debate when it felt like Bernie really could have closed the deal, really could have brought the hammer down, and just didn't. You know, like just like especially during the portion of the debate when he was when they were talking about climate change. That I thought was the strongest part of the debate for Bernie, when he was really hammering Biden on climate change. And he was talking about how, what we need to do more than what we're doing. When he said, even the global standards that Biden wants to hold people to, even those standards aren't enough. Like, I felt like that was a really, really strong part of the debate for Bernie, where it really allowed him to draw a distinction between him and Biden. And he came out and he came across very forceful, very passionate, very informed, and really put that through urgently, right? But he still couldn't nail it. Like, he still couldn't close the deal on Biden. And so I get it. Like, I get why I don't, as much as I wish people would vote for Sanders, I don't blame people for voting for Biden. I don't think Biden is a great candidate, but if he is the nominee, I would have no trouble voting for him, especially since the alternative is going to be Donald Trump. And if you look at a lot of what Biden proposes on paper, yes, it is not nearly as progressive as I would like it to be. Yes, it does not nearly go as far as I think it should go to not just roll back the damage Trump has done, but push us forward and start making real progress again. But it's not bad. Like, it's not bad. It's not as good as I think it should be, but it's not bad. So the never Biden people have completely lost me. Like, the never Biden people are, I don't get that. Because if you're saying never Biden, you're saying, well, Trump is okay for 4 more years. And I don't get that. I don't get that at all. I just, I got a couple more super chats, by the way, that I missed while I was going off. Thank you, John, for telling me about the muted sound. I appreciate it, even though it took me a minute to notice. Twilord said, Northern Ireland sees COVID-19 as a chance to show off how British they are. Not an ideal time to have a land border with the UK we can't legally cross. And then John Burns just said again, what's the difference between Obama and Joe Biden? What's the difference between Obama and Joe Biden? I mean, in terms of policy, probably not all that much. I mean, I think they both have a tendency to try and look for consensus and look for compromise, even when there isn't really an opportunity to do that. And I feel like at times that is a weakness. I mean, it's a strength to be able to compromise, but when you're chasing compromise with another side that has no interest in compromising with you, that I think at that point it becomes kind of a liability. But yeah, I mean, Biden choosing Barack as his running mate. I feel like if Biden could choose Barack as his running mate, at this point he would. Yeah, and Liam Foley says, do you think Biden can beat Trump? Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think he can. You know how he can beat Trump? If we all vote for him. If the people who would prefer Bernie Sanders, pull their pants up if he loses the nomination and go and vote for Joe Biden in November instead of taking their ball and going home. I'm really close to the end of my patience with people who are like, well, if Bernie doesn't win, I'm not going to vote, or I'm voting third party, or I'm writing Bernie's name in. Fuck you. Fuck you. I mean, are 4 years of Trump not enough? Like, I mean, look, I get it. I'm voting for Sanders in the primary. I hope that he gets the nomination. But if he doesn't get the nomination, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden in November. Jesus Christ. It's so frustrating. At some point, and look, it's not that I'm completely unsympathetic, because I do have an idealistic side, a very idealistic side. But at some point, you have to put the idealism aside, at least temporarily, and focus on the realistic choices that you have in front of you right now. And if you have a choice between 4 more years of Trump and 4 years of not Trump, and you say, well, but it's not the not Trump I really wanted, so I'm going to sit this one out. To hell with you. To hell with you. And by the way, that's not what Bernie Sanders wants you to do anyway. That's not what Bernie Sanders wants you to do. I keep getting, there's this old Onion article that was hilarious, and it was the headline was Jesus Christ converts to Islam. And the story was about Jesus converting to Islam. And there's a quote in the story from Christians, from like really hardcore evangelical Christians, who said they were disappointed that Jesus had converted to Islam, but they hoped that eventually he would come to his senses and realize that he really was still the Son of God. And that really, really reminds me of these like super, super hardcore strident Bernie supporters. It's like, even if Bernie himself loses the nomination and says, okay, this sucks, I know you're disappointed, but hey, not me, us, right? Let's all get behind the Democratic nominee. Let's all elect Joe Biden president of the United States, because as I have said many, many, many times during this campaign, the top priority is defeating Donald Trump. So let's all get together and do it. Let's put our egos and our personal things aside and just beat Trump now. And there are Bernie Sanders supporters who are like, nope, not going to do it. I don't know. I don't know. Oh, John Gingras, thank you for the super chat, says, just a quick detour from politics and pandemics. I got myself some Canada Dry lemon lime seltzer. It's good. Well, isn't it? Isn't it great? I'm drinking some lemon lime seltzer at the moment, but it is store brand. They did not. I went to restock, and they did not have any Canada Dry, so I had to get the store brand. But it is also lemon lime, and it's not bad. It's not quite as good as Canada Dry, but it's not bad. And by the way, I do not believe that is coronavirus related. It's very difficult sometimes. If you show up at the store at the wrong time, they often have runs on the Canada Dry lemon lime seltzer. I think probably because I guess it's like a popular mixer, and everybody around here are fucking drunks. So yeah. But anyway, and another super chat from John Burns. Thank you again, John. He says, Barack could be Joe's running mate. He could succeed Joe, but not be allowed to run for president at the end of Joe's terms. Is that true? I don't know if that's true. Maybe he could. There's a provision in the Constitution that says you can't serve more than a total of 10 years as president, because you can serve out up to 2 years of, like, if you're the vice president and you have to succeed the president, you can serve out up to 2 years of their remaining term and still be able to run for office for 2 full terms yourself. So you could maybe say that if Obama was Biden's vice president and he became president because Biden was no longer president for some reason, and there was less than 2 years of Biden's term remaining, Obama could fill that spot and then just couldn't run for re-election. But I don't know. That sounds kind of constitutionally dubious. I'm not sure if that would actually fly. But that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head, me being nowhere close to a constitutional scholar. So I don't know. But that's the only thing I can think of that would possibly allow that. I mean, generally speaking, I think if you're not eligible to run for president, you're not eligible to be vice president. And because he served his 2 terms, Obama is not eligible any longer to run for president. Oh, John Burns says, Google legal eagle 3rd term video. Maybe he might know better than I do. And also another one from Twilord. Some communists see it as Sanders or Accelerate. Yeah, I'm not. As you can probably tell, I am not an accelerationist. Let me see what else is going on in the chat. Yeah. Oh, yes. Harry Taints says Biden said he would pick a female as vice. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And that's another thing. And look, I get that people say like that was a really pandering thing to say. You know, like Biden saying, "Hey, ladies, I'll pick one of you for VP. Vote for me." Like I get that that's how it comes across. But you know, as soon as he did that, Bernie Sanders saying anything other than, yes, I will pick a woman VP too, would, to me, constitute losing that question. And that's what Bernie did. Instead of committing to choose a woman for VP, he gave a more complex answer, which there isn't anything necessarily wrong with that. But I mean, Biden, I'm telling you, Biden is because he is direct and relatively simple. That is what appeals to a lot of people. So anyway, yeah. Warren would be a great vice president. I would love it if Biden or Sanders, whichever one of them ends up being the nominee, I would love it if they picked Elizabeth Warren as vice president, and I would love it if she said yes. I don't know, though. I honestly don't expect it to be Warren. I wouldn't be, if Biden gets the nomination, I would not be surprised if he picks Kamala Harris. That would be, if I had to guess, it would probably, that would be my guess, that he would pick Kamala Harris. But I don't know any more than the rest of you. Yeah, Jeremy, I mean, I agree. I would like to see Biden choose a more progressive person as VP. I mean, I agree. I think that's why I think Warren would be great. And that might be a reason why maybe he wouldn't choose someone like Harris, because Harris is not perceived as being one of the more progressive candidates. Even though I don't think she was. I mean, I thought she was more progressive than Biden, but she's not as progressive as Sanders or as Warren. Yeah, and Stacey Abrams would be good too. Stacey Abrams might be on the list. I would be very surprised if Stacey Abrams was not on the list, and she may very well be someone that Biden would choose if he wants not only a woman and a woman of color, but also a more progressive choice. Because I do think Stacey Abrams would qualify as a more progressive candidate than Biden. John Burns, another super chat, thank you again, says Barack as Joe's running mate would cause Trump to scream all through the election, which would be bad. Michelle Obama isn't a bad idea, or Elizabeth. The thing about, I mean, look, I love Michelle Obama. I thought she was a great first lady. I think she's a great person. But other than being first lady, she doesn't have a lot of like serious national level political experience. And I feel like that would probably be a liability in the election. It wouldn't stop me from voting for him. Not for a second. But I don't know if it would be the best choice. Some Random Geek says, question, don't you wish you lived in Vietnam? Vietnam contained their outbreak, provided free tests, has a vaccine ready already, and gives everyone a mask they ask everyone to wear. Do they have a vaccine? I hadn't heard that. I had heard that the vaccine development was going to take a while yet. I haven't. You're the first person I've seen that says that Vietnam has a vaccine. But the other stuff, I wish that our response had been more like Vietnam's. Or honestly, I wish that our response, once China finally admitted that they had a problem and started actually dealing with it instead of fucking denying it and allowing it to get worse, once China actually started dealing with it, their response, as far as I can tell, has been terrific. And they're actually, even though that is where it started and that's where the outbreak has been by far the worst, they're starting to turn the tide because their response is actually really serious and really comprehensive. I wish our response had been something like that. John Burns says Tulsi Gabbard's a Democrat, right? Why not her? I don't think I wouldn't see the previous suggestions that Biden should pick someone who's more progressive than he is. Yeah, I didn't think that Vietnam had a vaccine. As to my knowledge, and again, I could be wrong. This is the first I'm hearing about it. But to my knowledge, there is no vaccine anywhere for this strain of coronavirus. No, actually, Adam O'Prey says, or is China just killing all infected cities and provinces? Now, AOC could not. Phage Live says AOC for VP. She is not. She is not eligible yet to serve as president, so she couldn't be VP this time. But I mean, in time when she is eligible, I would love for AOC to run for president. But anyway, about the Chinese response. There was someone on TV I saw talking about, there's a New York, I forget his name now, but a New York Times health reporter who was talking about China's response to the virus now, and it was really, really impressive. But hang on a second. First, Twilord posted another super chat. Thank you once again. Says he'll pick a Republican to heal the establishment's wounds from Trump's divisive era. Maybe Sarah Palin. Oh, boy. I don't think he's going to pick a Republican, and I don't think he's going to pick Sarah Palin, but I hear you. And one of the things that has troubled me about Biden, not troubled me, but just frustrated me, made me sort of, made me facepalm. Haha, yeah, it's the name of the show. Is how he says, oh, when I'm president, I'm going to be able to work with the Republicans. Like, he still has this mentality of, well, once I'm president and Trump's out of there, we can go back to the way things used to be. As though the way things used to be was okay. Like, does he not remember how Republicans treated Barack Obama during their administration? Like, it wasn't good back then either. Why would we want to go back to that instead of pushing forward? And, so that frustrates me about Biden. And Husher Fox with the super chat. Thank you very much for the super chat. So anyway, about the, and Katie Porter was great too, Joe. Katie Porter was great getting the CDC guy to commit to free testing and free treatment. And he even said, oh, you're a really good questioner, so I'll say yes. But anyway, so apparently the way it's working in China now is if in China, when you enter a public building, they take your temperature. And I assume they take it like with like a forehead thermometer, like they just sort of wave it. And if your temperature is elevated to the point where it's possible that you might be infected or have the virus, then you are sort of taken off to the side for further testing. And if the further testing continues to suggest that you are infected with the virus, then you're quarantined in a separate hospital. You're not sent home to self-quarantine so you can infect your family members and then send them out into the world to infect more people. You're taken to a separate facility for quarantine and treatment. And I don't know. I mean, I know some people might think that seems like draconian and authoritarian, but in a situation where you have a disease that is spread by social contact, and especially here in the United States, where we have just not taken this seriously at all. I mean, I feel like that kind of response is not entirely unwarranted. Now, it would be a lot better and easier to sell people on it if they felt they could trust their government, which, especially under the current administration, I don't blame people for thinking that they can't. But yeah, that's sort of like, that gives you an idea of what like a serious response to a pandemic like this looks like. And we just have not had anything close to that. And honestly, if Trump had taken the outbreak seriously 2 months ago, we would not be at this point anyway. Like, we would not be at the point of, oh shit, we're going to have to take some more drastic measures if the outbreak had been treated seriously from the very beginning. And it obviously it wasn't, and now here we are with CDC saying no gatherings of more than 50 people for 8 weeks, and everything being canceled and everything being closed. Okay, 255 AD said, okay, hang on, another super chat. Thank you for all the super chats, by the way, everybody. Another super chat from Moonface Martin 88. AUT scientists may have vaccine in a few months. Yeah, that's kind of what we've heard here too, that that at least it might be ready for clinical trials in a few weeks or months, but it still might be a while before it's publicly available. And then Another super chat from John Burns. Joe wants a Republican. Well, in that case, Cheney, Biden 2024. My last running mate was distracted by jingling keys, and so was Joe. Yeah. And another super chat from Husher Fox. Thank you again. Okay, now 255 AD says, question, are you not worried the GOP will just come back with an even more right-wing guy in 2024? That's what happened to Carter in 1980. Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm always worried about the continued push to the right of the Republican Party. But I mean, I don't know, like, there's only so much control we have as non-Republicans over who the Republicans choose to nominate and vote for. Like, of course, I'm worried anytime anyone puts up a far right candidate and they seem to gain traction. I would like it if they had less of a chance to win elections. That would be great. Another super chat from John Burns. Thank you again. In Canada, one of the Conservative leadership candidates mentioned using the War Measures Act to force people to report to hospitals for quarantines. If you like your textbook fascism, you can keep your textbook fascism. I don't know about that. I don't know about requiring forcible military quarantines, but I do think it might be a good idea to call out the military or at least the National Guard to help construct things like field hospitals. Because we're worried about reaching capacity of like IC units and hospital beds and respirators and things like that, and maybe calling out the National Guard and using the military in ways that are allowable to have the military operate within our borders, which there are legal limits to that, in order to facilitate ramping up that response might be a good idea. But forcing people to go to a military hospital, not necessarily the best response. And yeah, troubleshooter. I saw didn't they officially delay it or say that voting would be open until June or something? Was that Ohio that just did that? Maryland may have to push ours back too. Maryland's is scheduled for the end of April, and I think we might have to extend ours as well. I think a lot of states are facing having to do that. Yeah, Husher Fox, thank you again for the super chat. But yeah, your super chats are all blank. So if you're trying to ask me a question, I'm sorry, I can't see what you're trying to say. So I apologize for that, but I'm not sure what to tell you to do about it. I love Dana correcting people on the specific generation that Bernie Sanders is a part of. It's beautiful. Douglas Sharon, has Maryland been infected? We've had cases. Yeah, there have been cases in Maryland, yes. And the governor of Maryland just issued an order closing down restaurants and other public places. So yeah, Maryland has been affected. And then Douglas also says, which Star Trek character would be a good president? What was your favorite Superman film? Star Trek character would be a good president. I think Picard obviously would be a great president if he was eligible, if we could change the law so that people born in France could become president of the United States. Picard would be great. And favorite Superman movie is Superman Returns. Twilord, another super chat, thank you again, says, if Biden did choose a Republican to reestablish normality, how would you motivate the left to show up? That would be really tough. That's why I don't think he should choose a Republican, and proclivities might actually be. I don't think he will. And John, if I missed your non-super chat, I'm sorry. I didn't. I just didn't see it. But that you don't have to do another super chat if you don't want to. I just didn't. I just missed it. I apologize. Sound is out again. How's that? Is that okay? Now it's out of sync. Okay. Oh, Husher Fox, your super chat came through. Tell people to stay home and not order out. Good idea. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave and come back to put the sound back in sync. Be right back. Okay, how's that? Sorry about that. I have no idea why it does that. Every once in a while, I thought I had figured out why it was doing that, but apparently not. Every so often, my computer will just sort of freeze for a few seconds, and if it happens during a live stream, when it unfreezes, the audio and the video are out of sync. So I apologize for that. If anybody has any idea how to fix that, I'm open to suggestions. I've already tried a few things, and it doesn't seem like I've got it fixed. So, but yeah, thank you for being patient with that. We'll go for a few more minutes, and then I'll wrap this up. 255 AD says, I don't know what to do about my dad not taking the virus seriously. I can't lock him if he insists on getting a pint. I mean, I don't know. I mean, at a certain point, it's kind of not your, it's kind of, this seems harsh, but it's kind of not your problem. I mean, if your dad has been informed of what the problem is and what we all need to do to protect ourselves and each other from getting infected, and he's just not willing to do it, I mean, what else can you do? You can't just tie him up, you know? But I'm sorry that you have to worry about that. Dana, I did turn it off and turn it back on. That's what worked. That's what worked. I turned it off and turned it back on. And actually, it's in terms of literally turning it off and turning it back on, like half an hour before the stream started, I restarted the computer. I've been getting into the habit of doing that too, just in case, and it doesn't seem to help. So I don't know. I don't know what to do. Yes, Core 409, a new PC, relatively new. I got it a few months ago. Actually, shit, I guess I got it. I got it last year. I got it over the summer last year, so it's not like brand new, but it's, you know. Serendum Geek, are people going to realize that capitalism exacerbated the problems of this outbreak? People with no sick leave being forced to go to work, and that's just the tip. I think people are starting to realize that to an extent. I don't know if they're going to realize it to the extent that you would like them to the extent that they say no more capitalism. But I do think that people are starting to realize that there are inherent, in terms of a system that is unregulated and that allows for the kinds of abuses that we have seen and doesn't really know how to respond to the kinds of sudden panics that create shortages that we have seen. I think people are starting to realize that capitalism is not helping with this problem. John Byrne says, for religious reasons, Tulsi Gabbard would be bad. The M's don't like the fact that she's an H. Think religions. Okay. And Twilord said, sound cut prior to answering my nightmare question. Okay. Let me see if I can find that. I don't. What nightmare question? You mean the? You mean if Biden chose a Republican? Is that the nightmare question? Did the sound cut out before that? Yeah, if that's what you're referring to, I think that's one of the big reasons why I don't think Biden would choose a Republican, because I think it would. He knows that it would smash voter turnout. Oh, and Kim, I did get your super chat. Thank you. And it says DeWine postponed it and petitioned the courts, meaning that the Ohio primary, right? That's what you're referring to, Governor DeWine. Oh, Robert, I didn't see that. Has Vince canceled that? Has Vince canceled WrestleMania? That must have just happened. I did not see that. Let me get back to that in a second. 255 AD said, "Do you think it'd be easier to address stuff like climate change or pandemics if we had a command economy like in the old USSR?" I mean, certain things would be easier, yeah, but I don't know if that's necessarily like a reason to to support that kind of thing. Austin Mount says, "I've seen a few of these shows now, and I just want to say it's awesome to see an internet chat group where there's nothing but respect and good manners, especially on the YouTube." Well, thank you. I think we get a few people in every now and then who don't know how to behave, but I think either I or one of the mods dispense with them pretty quickly. So I think the chat is usually in pretty good shape. So thank you. I appreciate it too. John Burns, another super chat, says NHL teams are paying their part-time workers during the shutdown. This might be for selfish reasons, shame the Flames, but it's good. Hashtag not capitalism. I agree. I think workers who miss work as a result of this ought to be paid, whether they're full-time or part-time or whatever. I mean, you know. Yeah, no, he didn't. Jeremy, he did not cancel it on his own. No, and I don't think he was ever going to. Some random geek, is it time for a general strike that could bring about socialism? Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe this is the perfect time for it. Maybe, you know, now that everybody's kind of in, a lot of people are staying home and a lot of businesses are closed anyway. Maybe this would be the time for people to say, you know what, maybe we're not coming back to work until we sort a few things out. Like maybe this, you know, this is you know, a time to try that. And then, of course, the Republicans can say, how dare they? They're taking advantage of a pandemic. We would never do that. Oh, hey, Jesse Gender is here. Hi, Jesse. And right above that, David Colby asks a Picard question. Picard has done more to make Romulans interesting than 14 years of 90s era Star Trek. They now have characteristics beyond sneaky. Yeah, I have enjoyed some of the world building about the Romulans in Picard. I still haven't been like a huge fan of the stuff going on the Borg cube. I still think that has been like overall the least interesting part of the show to this point. But the little bits of Romulan culture that have been revealed through Narek and his sister, what's her name, Narissa, I have enjoyed those. I do think the sort of the fleshing out of Romulan culture has been interesting. Oh, and yeah, that's right, Jesse. You just had surgery. I hope you're healing up nicely. I hope you're feeling better. Joe says, "Do you think it is possible the R's will lose support from companies that lose money due to Trump's poor response?" God, I hope so. I hope that the Republicans lose support from everybody as a result of this. I mean, and I know that's not going to happen, because there have been cases, nothing quite to this level recently, but there have been cases in the recent past, just since Trump has been president, that have shown without a shadow of a doubt that the Republicans are not fit to govern, that their policies are terrible for people, that they're inept, that they're short-sighted, that they're just not who we should have in charge of our government, and yet they haven't lost that much support. So I don't want to say, yes, this will definitely be it, but God damn it, it ought to be. Another super chat from John Burns, like the Romulan stuff on Picard, but did you have to eliminate all Vulcans? Again, logic is too hard for screenwriters to deal with. Well, Star Trek writers have had troubles writing Vulcans all along. This is not just a Picard thing. Writers have long had trouble writing Vulcans, and actors other than Leonard Nimoy and Mark Leonard, to be completely frank, have long had trouble playing Vulcans. That's not to say that there haven't been other actors who have played Vulcans well, because there have been. I think eventually all of the actors who have played Spock have done a good job, but it's been touch and go in the beginning, you know what I mean? And other Vulcan characters as well. They're either too emotional, or they play them like just, they play them like robots. It seems like those are the two extremes. So it's a really difficult character, a really difficult type to get into as an actor, I think. I think it's probably just a real challenge to play a character that has suppressed emotions, but to not play them as being really flat and dull. Nimoy found a way to do it as Spock, and Mark Leonard found a way to do it as Sarek. And other actors have found ways to do it too, but it takes a while. It's difficult. And it's difficult to write as well. So, I mean, it's not just a Picard thing. That's a Star Trek thing just in general. It's a tough nut to crack. Yeah, Jesse, Jolene Blalock did do a good job once she dialed into it. I thought that T'Pol ended up being a pretty good character, and that she, ended up giving a good layered performance. Yeah, Zachary Quinto was really good. I think he was probably better the longer that he played him. Like Braden just said in the chat, I think in Star Trek Beyond, that was him at his best. In the first one, I think he fell a little bit into the too emotional trap I was saying, but I never thought he was bad. Like, I didn't think, when I watched the first Star Trek, the first reboot Star Trek, it's not like I was saying, oh God, Spock was terrible. I thought he was fine. But yeah, it's just, it's tough. I think it's really difficult as an actor to find, to navigate, that middle ground between emotion and complete non-emotion and build like a really interesting character. Twilord says Tim Russ nailed Vulcan despite Voyager's issues. See, Tim Russ was one of the ones I was thinking of about when I said too robotic. I think he definitely had his moments as Tuvok. I think generally speaking, Tim Russ is a terrific actor. Actually, I just watched the most recently completed season of American Horror Story, and Tim Russ pops up in that for one episode, and it was really cool to see him, and he did a really, really great job. But I kind of think Tuvok was a little bit more on the flat robotic side a lot of the times. Especially in his delivery, his voice, his version of like the Vulcan deadpan was a little bit too flat and monotonous for my taste most of the time. So I don't know if I would necessarily say that for my taste that Tim Russ nailed it. But like I said, it's really difficult. Yeah, Tuvok's scenes with Neelix were usually pretty good. I'll give you that, Joe. Tuvok's scenes with Neelix were pretty good. See, Seal 0626 says the trouble with Quinto for me is that I'll always see Sylar. I never watched Heroes. So I don't have that problem, but I see how that might be a problem if he goes from playing like a really prominent character in a show and all of a sudden he's Spock. I get why you might be like, oh, come on. Now I've got to think of him as Spock. Yeah, it makes sense. 255 AD says the UK government is going to delay local elections because of the virus. Do you think that should be allowed? I think the last time they did that was World War II. Well, the thing is, if it's not safe for people to come out in public, then I don't think you have any choice. I think you have to delay the election. I think that's what we're facing here in the United States as we continue to have state primary elections. It's not, it's a matter of safety. It's a matter of public safety. If it's not safe for people to gather in large groups, like, for instance, standing in line at a polling place, I don't really see like you have any choice. You have to delay it. I don't know what else to do. John Byrne says, actor, to be or not to be, whether it is bolder in the mind to suffer. How could this guide me during my acting career? I don't know. Joe says, why didn't you watch Heroes? I just didn't pay attention to it while it was on. Like, I didn't boycott it intentionally. I wasn't like, I'm never watching Heroes. I just didn't watch it. I just never watched it while it was on. Anthony Valpando says, do you think the stock market dropped? My thank for Trump. Do I think, do you mean, do I think Trump is is responsible for the stock market drop? Largely, yeah, largely. I mean, I don't think it's all his fault. I think it probably would have dropped no matter who was president in response to the pandemic. But yeah, I think Trump's utterly inept response and the fact that every time he goes on TV to try and calm people's fears, he only spreads more information and more confusion and makes it worse, is partly responsible for it. Sure, yeah, yeah. And Jesse, yes, Sylar is a terrific Vulcan name. I agree. It would also be a good name for like a planet in Star Trek. You know, we're setting course for Sylar 8. That just sounds like a planet in Star Trek, doesn't it? And yeah, the fact that should we make vote by mail automatic, Austin? Yeah, maybe. I think we should make voter registration automatic. I suppose we could make vote by mail automatic too. Just everybody automatically gets sent a ballot in the mail a few months or a few weeks before the election, and you can either mail it in or you can or you can opt not to and go vote in person. I mean, as long as there were safeguards in place to stop that being abused, like I would have no problem with that. Yeah, I mean, I think voting should be as easy to do for as many people as possible. 255 AD, what about the presidential election? I don't want to give the Trump administration the power to change the election date, even if it puts lives at risk. Neither do I. But again, I mean, if it's a public health issue, I don't really see the alternative. I mean, I'm with you. I would not trust the Trump administration with that duty either. I don't want the Trump administration to even be in power at all. So, you know, but I mean, if it's a public health crisis, I don't know what the alternative is. That's what I know. That's what we'd be worried about. 255 AD says, you know, they delay it indefinitely. That's the fear, absolutely, and we'd have to cross that bridge when we got to it, I guess. Twilord Super Chat says, what if the Green Party won by cosmic glitch? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? It would be interesting. I presume they would largely find allies within the Democratic caucus in the House and the Senate, but it would be interesting. John Burns also says Trump is also responsible for the massive stock bailout, like with Bush in 2007 for the banks and Obama in 2009 for the automotive corps. Plus Pelosi. Yeah, I think it's fairly obvious that Trump cares primarily about the stock market, and that's it. Like I mentioned in the first section of the video, that's what finally sort of provoked him to actually try to respond to the coronavirus outbreak after spending weeks downplaying it and saying, oh, it's no big deal, it'll go away by itself. When the stock market finally started to crash, that's all of a sudden when he started to take notice and say, hey, everybody calm down, because that's all he gives a shit about. Because that was bragging rights for him. It's not just that he's like a business guy and he only cares about business and money and doesn't give a shit about people. I mean, that is the case. But it's also, he thought because the economy and the stock market had been doing pretty good up until that point, thanks mostly to Obama's policies, Trump thought that that could be bragging rights for him. How's your 401k? He would say. And now that you can't say that anymore, now he's getting worried, you know, because now he can't brag on the stock market to get people to try and convince people to vote for him. You know, he has, you know, he said I think he said it to donors in Mar-a-Lago. He said, oh, you have to vote for me because, you know, I'm good for business, right? Whether you like me or not, you have to vote for me because I'm good for business. And now it turns out maybe not so much. But that's why he's gone after the, you know, that's why he responds so swiftly, albeit ineptly, to the swings in the stock market. So we might as well just go 90 minutes since we're almost there, but I'll wrap things up in the next 5 minutes, just so everybody knows. So we'll answer a few more questions from the live chat and then call things to a close. Yes, please don't be racist against the Ferengi, and please don't insult the Ferengi as a race by comparing them to Trump. That's just not fair. It's just ugly. We don't need that ugliness. We don't. Der Alte Trekkie says, why are people still being stupid enough to vote for Trump? And how could people be so stupid to yell Picard would be SJW stuff? People people just don't pay attention. A lot of people just honestly don't pay attention to stuff and have priorities that to me are utterly baffling. I mean, whether you care about other people or you care only about yourself and your own selfish interests, I don't get why anybody would want to vote for Trump for any reason. But people do. And I don't get how anybody who could be a Star Trek fan would complain about it having SJW stuff when quote unquote SJW stuff and politically correct stuff and whatever has been the heart and soul of Star Trek since 1966. So it's like, what show, just like I talked about in my Trek Actually video last week. Like I sometimes I honestly wonder, what show have you been watching that now you're complaining about it being too SJW? Like, how did you miss the last 50 some years of what we would now call SJW, politically correct, woke, whatever stuff? I don't get it. And yeah, Jesse, that's a great point. I think I've said that in videos as well, that the new shows, the Discovery, Picard, like the Kurtzman generation of shows are by far the least preachy Star Trek shows ever produced. I'm with you. I agree with that 100%. I don't get it. How could you think that Discovery and Picard are like too preachy or too politically correct or whatever? You know, I can't believe the writers and the producers are forcing their politics on all of us. And you didn't think that about Next Generation? You didn't think that about fucking classic Trek? Like, I mean, I feel like some of these people would watch The Twilight Zone and not get that The Twilight Zone was political. Like, I think it just goes completely over their head. And I don't get that. I don't get how that's possible unless they're just not paying attention to the show. But I feel like that's, I mean, yeah, I agree. Disco and Picard are some of the least obviously preachy Star Trek shows ever. And yet, oh, they're the SJW shows that were ruined. Oh, okay. And Robert has the and Twilord in another super chat. Thank you again. Says Dems could go obstructionist, existential defense. Yeah, I guess you mean in response to the Green Party thing. I mean, yeah, I guess they could. Or you mean if Trump got reelected, they could go obstructionist. I mean, yeah, they honestly, with Trump in office, I wish the Democrats would be more obstructionist than they have been. Now there is another question I saw. Oh, Robert posted something about. WWE canceling WrestleMania. In coordination with local partners and government officials, WrestleMania and all related events in Tampa Bay will not take place. Can I just say, I know it's petty as shit. That makes me so happy. And I feel bad. I feel bad for anybody who is affected by it. I feel bad for people. I feel bad for the indie promotions who hold events on WrestleMania weekend that I mean, they aren't going to, most of them already canceled their shows, you know, even before WrestleMania was canceled, they all already canceled their shows because they were more responsible and they said, we can't hold shows during a pandemic. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for wrestlers who are going to miss out on paydays and for wrestlers who maybe were counting on either who work for WWE and were counting on their WrestleMania payday, or who don't work for WWE and were counting on getting a good payday from one of these shows taking place kind of in the WrestleMania orbit. Like, I feel bad for all of those people. And I feel bad for people who are going to have trouble canceling their plans and getting their money back and all that stuff. But honestly, it makes me so fucking happy. And just out of sheer petty, vile, you know, just bile against Vince McMahon and WWE, it makes me so fucking happy that they had to cancel that show. You have no idea. And I know I should feel bad about it. And it doesn't show a very good side of my personality. But Jesus Christ, it makes me fucking happy. It makes me almost gleeful that they had to cancel that show, because fuck that company and fuck Vince McMahon and fuck the people that are defending him and propping him up and fuck that whole fucking place. Fuck that whole fucking place. Yeah, Twilord's another super chat. Wouldn't obstruct right, would left. Sad truth. Yeah, you're probably right. The Democrat, they're at very least just as likely to be obstructionist to people too far to the left as opposed to the. You're right. Dana says, "You, Petty? Who would ever have thought?" I mean, I feel like you've probably seen that side of me from time to time. Yeah, I know, right? Who would have thought? Joe McClory says, "How shitty is it that the performers have to keep moving around the country to do the shows, even though the shows are not having audiences?" Yeah, that's probably, that's one of the reasons why I think AEW might end up having to cancel shows as well. Even though AEW has also made the announcement that for the next couple weeks they're going to be doing shows to no audience, which is better certainly than doing it in front of an audience, but yeah, the travel could still expose the wrestlers and the crew and everybody to infection. And it's still not a very, like, the safest thing would probably be just to cancel everything and just say, we're just going dark for a few weeks. I mean, yeah, because, it's the safest thing. Okay. Here's another super chat from John, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So thanks to everybody for joining me. One more super chat from John. Says, is it fair to say that conservatives like the Twilight Zone because it was anti-Blacklist? Same with I Am Spartacus breaking the movie Blacklist. I don't know if that was a major reason, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, did conservatives like the Twilight Zone at the time that it was originally on? I mean, maybe they did, and I'm not aware of it. But the Twilight Zone was also, in terms of the Twilight Zone's politics, it was also pretty progressive. The original Twilight Zone, I mean, it was pretty progressive. Yeah, Dana, they could perform at a single location, but they would, I guess, as if they could get all the wrestlers to that location and just have everybody stay there, then yeah, it's feasible, it's fine. But like for wrestlers that live in other parts of the country that would have to travel to that location just to get there to do the show, it might still be a problem. But I mean, as a wrestling fan, if it could be done safely and responsibly, of course, and I'm a big AEW fan, especially now at this point, WWE headquarters can burn to the ground and I wouldn't give a shit. But as you know, other companies, as long as they can do it safely, I'm all for it because, I love wrestling, but it still might be an issue if people have to, if the wrestlers and the crew have to travel to get to that single location in order to do the show. But we'll see what happens. I hope everybody's okay. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I already plugged my Patreon earlier. I'll plug it really quickly one more time. Patreon.com/Steve Shives if you want to help me continue to do this thing that I do. Pledges of any amount are supported. $5 a month or more gets you a shout out. I also want to remind you that in addition to YouTube, I co-host a couple of podcasts along with the great Jason Harding, aka Jason with a D, although he hasn't done Opinionville for a while. I don't know if he still wants to be going by Jason with a D, but yeah, we co-host the Late Seating podcast, which we just reviewed Transformers as our most recent episode. And also we do the Ensign's Law, which is a Star Trek themed comedy podcast, which is sort of on hiatus right now, though we are going to start recording season 3 this coming weekend. So that should be exciting, and look for that. So yeah, letmelistenpodcast.com, and links to everything in the description. Also in the description, don't forget the charity links. Some friends of ours who need a little help financially, who are in some difficult times. If you can possibly afford to help them out with a few bucks, please do. If you can't afford to help them out, consider sharing on your social media and spreading the word for our friends who need some financial support. And that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you to everybody in the live chat so much for being here. I just saw a live chat from John Burns. This is the last one. Told the studio they'd have to reshoot the movie, and they decided they didn't care about the blacklist. Yay, capitalism. Yeah. Kirk Douglas for Spartacus was definitely a big part of breaking the blacklist. And Kirk Douglas is also the star of the movie that we're doing for the next episode of Late Seating. We're reviewing the classic Stanley Kubrick World War I film Paths of Glory. So look for that. So anyway, thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you all for the questions and for hanging out. And I will be back on Friday to do this again for Ask Away, where it'll be questions the whole time. So look forward to that. And hopefully some of you will be able to join me for that one on Friday. And that's it, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching and for being patient with the technical glitches. And I'll see you later. Bye, everybody.